Every new game in every single franchise has to demonstrate why it exists. This is true in gaming, and one could even argue for the vast majority of media out there. Still, there's something about fighting games that make the acceptance of a new installment have some friction. The most recent example of this is with Street Fighter. Street Fighter 6 needed to be that angsty teenager going up to its parents and saying, "Yes, I am a part of the family, but I'm my own thing, damn it. I'm my own man, and I can do what I want. I can have a drive system if I want, and modern controls too, and that's okay, Mom." Okay, obviously this is a joke, but the point still stands. All of these games have to prove that they carry the same DNA of the original franchises, but also show something new, something different, and something newcomers and old players can tinker with. That's a very delicate balance that is hard to find. Even incredible developers will struggle to do so. Unsurprisingly, many of them keep a lot of their senior staff, particularly those in creative roles, to allow the DNA to only slowly evolve instead of massively making sweeping changes to the formula. Perhaps there is no more remarkable example of this than with Mortal Kombat, as Ed Boon continues to be the voice and the face of NetherRealm Studios. And so we've reached this point once again. The honeymoon phase of a new release in the Mortal Kombat franchise is slowly fading away, and the discussion as to whether or not the latest entry in the series matches that of the previous one begins. In today's video, we are exploring the different components between Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 1, giving you a wider perspective on how things were. We also do want to make an essential note here that this is not the final time you're going to hear the discussion, nor the first. This has happened and will continue to do so in the future. And there are two key factors that can misshape how we view video games. The first, and perhaps the most obvious, is that we grow older. If you played Mortal Kombat 11 at release when you were 16, well, congratulations, you are likely turning 20 now, and maybe playing Mortal Kombat 1. The things you like or don't like about video games, the trends happening in the industry, and your own lived experiences have all reshaped how you enjoy games. Memories of them might be sweet, and for MK quite gory, but they are just that, memories, rose-tainted glasses you put on when looking back. The second important factor is that today in modern gaming, updates are king. Over the past 3 years, plenty of games with mediocre releases suddenly got a new lifeline, thanks to their dedicated developers. The most common example cited is No Man's Sky, which had a mediocre release and is now seen as a classic for the space exploration and survival genre. Similarly, Cyberpunk 2077 had a terrible release, especially for those playing on consoles. Yet, 3 short years later, it developed into a great first-person RPG. Of course, this carries an Onaga-sized asterisk of needing developers to consistently put out more updates that improve the game, which unfortunately is not always the case. Mortal Kombat 11 did have, for the most part, good support, especially considering the major expansion a year after its release set up the critically acclaimed story in Mortal Kombat 1. There is some room to argue that we should allow NetherRealm Studios to show us what they can do with Mortal Kombat 1 over the years. That said, Mortal Kombat 1 could leave a sour taste in many players' mouths. We hope NetherRealm Studios listens to the community and takes steps to address those issues. No one likes it when a game becomes abandonware. That risk is all the more present in the age of always online. Because for all we've said about embracing new entries into these franchises, there is still the argument, and we think it is an incredibly valid one, that all titles, be it Street Fighter 1, Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 1, the very old one, or Mortal Kombat 2 and 3, or any of the 3D era, all of those games should be accessible whether you have an internet connection or not, and whether or not the developers have stopped support for those titles long ago. So let's jump into the big topic first, offline modes. The franchise has cultivated a following for its story, one of the few fighting games to do so. They weren't great hits every time, but they certainly have shown Hollywood-level quality over the past few titles. In this regard, Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 1 share a strong foundation in their character chapters, spotlighting one member of the game's roster for a short time while the narrative develops through cutscenes, with fights becoming the bone to the story's muscle. Interestingly, there has been one change here, taking out some of the fight choices in the chapter scene in Mortal Kombat 11. Instead, Mortal Kombat 1 gives you the most surprising choice for the very last chapter of the game, which, spoilers, gives you the option to select any fighter from the roster. NRS's quality animation and voice acting, at least from experienced voice actors, sorry, Rhonda and Megan,
We can't help what we are.
shines brightly in both titles. Mortal Kombat 1's story also feels much more compact and focused than 11's. Perhaps the timeline resetting has allowed Ed Boon and the rest of the team to construct a more solid narrative. However, time will tell if it will remain consistent, as the threat of the multiverse narratives looms over the new timeline. Mortal Kombat 11 and 1 also have another single-player mode, though controversially, they are both online only. The Crypt in Mortal Kombat 11 was a third-person, pseudo-open-world adventure filled with fights, puzzles, and challenges for players to overcome in the quest for completion, or more often, to have a few more cosmetics. In Mortal Kombat 1, this mode has been replaced by Invasions, a season mode with much more in common with tabletop games than the previous entry. Furthermore, it requires an internet connection to be played at all. Beyond that limiting factor, the season lasts only a few weeks, and any content not unlocked during them remains unachievable until the day NRS decides to bring back that invasion. We've actually detailed the entirety of Invasions on our site, where you can also find daily news about the FGC, tournament results, player rankings, and more for all major titles like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and Tekken, among many others. There are also towers, which function much the same way from game to game, but which have been moved from their own game mode to a small number for offline mode, and the hourly, daily, and seasonal towers are now receding inside the invasion mode. Perhaps the most criticized element of Mortal Kombat 1 is that need to always be online. What does this mean in the future when Warner Bros. Doesn't support the game anymore? During a scheduled maintenance just a few weeks into the game release, the connection was lost across the board, causing Havoc and Shang Tsung to become unplayable, even though players owned them. Havoc was a particular pain point as the character is unlocked via the story mode and is part of the base roster. That is to say nothing of the unlockable cameos becoming locked upon lost service. Although it has been known that Mortal Kombat 11's cosmetics will become inaccessible the moment its servers go offline, it is no less painful to know that Mortal Kombat 1 and plenty of other games in the industry walk the same path. One of the most fundamental changes from Mortal Kombat 11 to Mortal Kombat 1 is its gameplay design. Introducing Cameos added a new dimension to what players can pull off regarding pressure, combos, and utility. Speaking of cameos, we've partnered up with some of the best NRS competitors out there to produce detailed guides, including cameo pairings for all the characters in Mortal Kombat 1. Make sure to check them out and subscribe to DashFight here on YouTube for more. Yet, it's not like cameos came out of nowhere. Variations in MK11 had a similar, be it more limited, role in players' expression and adaptation. It was not until a year after the game's release that variations became open for people to try to mix and match for every given character. Even then, it was only on a per-character basis, and clearly not all the moves had the same importance. It's hard to say just how impactful cameos will be in Mortal Kombat 1, but their role as extra moves to any character, as well as their defensive role during combos and to make certain long startup moves safe, makes for an interesting solution that players are just now starting to dig deeper into. From Serena's perceived power as a combo and pressure demon, to Cyrax making a lot of moves safe, to Kung Lao's area denial, and Sub-Zero's armor providing a worthy tool against zoners, the space for innovation is wide open for people to try. Not every cameo will unlock every character's potential, but they provide a new way for players to explore what is possible, whether by augmenting a character's natural strengths or keeping away their weakest side. With the Cameos roster expanding alongside the main fighters, there can be brand new pairings years in the future that prove a match made in heaven for otherwise low-tier characters. It's surprising how fast things have developed in fighting games over the past 5 years. Mortal Kombat 11's netcode was seen as solid at the time of its release. Obviously, it was not a replacement for offline, especially for those looking to compete, but stable enough to open the door for a greater number of people to enjoy multiplayer matches in their regions. In the time since then, rollback netcode has taken the fighting game scene by storm, with virtually every major developer embracing a new and better way to handle online connectivity during matches. So much so that even non-fighting games are marketing their rollback implementations or similar solutions in recent years because of its success in the FGC. Even though the technology is much older, tracing its roots back to Quake. Both Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 1 enjoy the benefits of rollback, but even with a very similar implementation, MK1 comes up somewhat short, lacking in lobbies, a feature that is mysteriously missing at release. However, there is no amount of rollback can help when the connectivity quality leaves room for improvement. For Mortal Kombat 1, players in Africa and the Middle East have been reporting numerous issues, with very high latency chief among them. Mortal Kombat 11 came onto the scene at a very interesting time for fighting games. 2019 was just about the last year before the major downturn in investment and sponsorships for esports. Although the core of the FGC navigated those years unaffected by venture capital, they were nevertheless in rocky waters due to the pandemic. Mortal Kombat 11's pro competition was one of the most expansive circuits in the fighting game community at the time. It had multiple events and spanned dozens of countries. Even though its total prize pool was relatively small, it still drove thousands of players to compete in online events and eventually in local regional finals. Unfortunately, 2020 and the pandemic almost completely killed the momentum of many fighting game tournaments, and sadly, there was no pro competition after that. However, it's 2023 and a new pro competition has been announced for Mortal Kombat 1. Although it does not match the prizes of some of its contemporaries, the most at-hand example being Street Fighter VI's $2 million Capcom Cup, it's still a massive achievement that Mortal Kombat will have a first-party circuit once again. This is to say nothing of just how popular Mortal Kombat is with general audiences. Sure, it's gory, and it has a long history of not being the most critically acclaimed fighting game of each generation, but people love Mortal Kombat. It's a cultural phenomenon, and it's going to be very interesting to see what numbers a major tournament like EVO can pull off once they open their Mortal Kombat 1 bracket to registrations. As Mortal Kombat X was to Mortal Kombat 9, and Mortal Kombat 11 to X, each new title brings forth a lot of new, exciting ideas to the Mortal Kombat franchise. But there is also a vestige in each, whether a result of a wider trend in gaming, or just the natural inclination towards certain designs from NetherRealm Studios, they live on with each new title. So let us know in the comments what you think is going to stick around for the long term. Is it Cameos, or what do you think it is? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next video.